Every monitoring station across the galaxy had been working like usual. Ships passed quietly through the vast emptiness of space, probes scanned distant stars, and sensors quietly recorded everything from radiation bursts to the slow drift of VAV. Cosmic dust. It was all ordinary, all expected. Life went on in the systems where most civilizations were more concerned with politics, trade, and old rivalries than with anything truly surprising. That's why no one was ready for what happened next. At first, it started as a faint blip on a few of the more sensitive detection arrays. Analysts noted it, but didn't pay much attention. Signals like this appeared from time to time. Maybe it was a star going through its usual cycle, or a comet releasing unexpected energy. Most scientists recorded it, filed it, and moved on. But then the blip grew stronger, and it didn't behave like any natural phenomenon anyone had ever seen. It wasn't just a spike or a ripple. It was structured, organized. It had patterns that suggested intelligence. Every system in the mid-rim picked it up almost simultaneously. Ships that were patrolling the edges of known space reported it, and even deep space observatories far from the main clusters detected it. It didn't matter how advanced a civilization was. The anomaly was impossible to ignore. At first, panic quietly spread among scientists. Something so precise, so powerful, should not exist in a place as seemingly insignificant as the planet. The signal was coming from. The readings were double-checked, triple-checked, even compared across galaxies, and every time they pointed to the same source: Earth, a planet that many had dismissed as primitive, a world of mostly isolated people, with barely any interstellar presence. How could something that shook entire detection systems originate there? The first official reports caused immediate debate. Councils and committees gathered virtually, their holographic meetings filled with murmurs and disbelief. "It's impossible," one elder of a long-lived species said, their voice trembling with disbelief. "Earth is not capable of producing something of this magnitude." Other analysts disagreed. "We cannot ignore the evidence," a scientist replied, their eyes wide as they adjusted data projections. "The readings are clear. The energy burst, its frequency, its speed, they all point to intelligent design. It is deliberate, not accidental." The argument raged for hours. Some feared it might be a weapon, a threat designed to reach across space. Others thought it could be a call for help. A few argued quietly in corners that it could be an entirely new form of science, something so advanced that even the oldest civilizations had never encountered it. But no one could deny one thing. Every system, without exception, detected the unbelievable. And it came from Earth. Meanwhile, on Earth, life went on mostly as usual. Most people had no idea that a ripple of energy was moving outward from their planet, creating shockwaves that reached far beyond the solar system. Cities were busy, labs were humming, and space agencies were quietly testing new technologies that no one outside a small circle even understood. Inside one research facility, a team of scientists was reviewing data from a long-term experiment. They had been working on a new form of energy propulsion, something that could one day allow ships to travel faster than anyone had thought possible. It was experimental, untested, and dangerous. The team had no idea that their small-scale test had triggered an effect that reached across the galaxy. To them, it was just another late-night test, routine and controlled. The first signs of alarm came when some of the team noticed odd readings on their instruments. The energy output had exceeded their calculations. The field they created was not just contained in the lab. It was spreading far beyond what anyone had anticipated. At first, they assumed it was a calibration error. The instruments were double-checked, settings were reviewed, and even the sensors themselves were inspected. But the readings remained dot. It wasn't long before the team realized something extraordinary had happened. Their experiment meant to pushed the boundaries of local physics, had unintentionally sent a pulse of energy far into space. That pulse carried a signature, a distinct mark of intelligence and precision. And because of the way the energy behaved, it had caught the attention of civilizations across light years. Outside the facility, life on Earth carried on as normal. Children played in parks, cars moved through busy streets, and people went about work and home routines. No one had any idea that their planet had just announced its presence to the galaxy in a way that no one would forget. Humans had always been considered insignificant in interstellar terms, a minor species with limited resources and limited reach. But this accidental broadcast changed that perception entirely. Back in the galaxy, officials began to prepare for a response. The signal had created a stir that no one could ignore. Some species debated whether to send a scout fleet. Others thought it might be a trap. Every precaution was considered because the energy signature was powerful enough to disrupt communication networks, navigation systems, and even weapon calibrations in several star systems. It was not just power that fascinated them. It was humanity's timing, their precision, and their unexpected ingenuity. No other species had produced something like this without centuries of interstellar travel experience or access to resources far beyond a single planet. Earth, a world often written off as primitive, had suddenly drawn the attention of every major system. In some councils, old political rivalries were temporarily forgotten as debates centered around one question. What did this mean? How could humans, who were barely known, create something so advanced? There was fear, certainly, but there was also curiosity. Many civilizations began to secretly wonder if humans had been hiding far greater abilities than anyone had suspected. For the scientists on Earth, the realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. They had never intended for this level of impact. Their work had been careful, meticulous, and mostly theoretical. But now, every civilization in nearby space was watching. The ripple they had created would be impossible to ignore. And as the team began to understand the scale of what had happened, they also realized that humanity was on the brink of a new chapter, one that would thrust an ordinary planet into extraordinary circumstances. The energy pulse continued to move outward, crossing vast distances faster than anyone had predicted. By the time the first alien envoys started to track it, the signal had already left the solar system and reached systems that humans had only ever dreamed of studying. Every detection array confirmed the same impossible truth. It came from Earth. And everywhere it went, it left awe, fear, and a sense of wonder in its wake. Even as alarms rang and councils debated, humans remained largely unaware of the storm brewing in the galaxy. Daily life continued. People went to work, cooked meals, laughed with friends, and worried about things like taxes or weather. But hidden beneath the surface of their everyday world, a quiet revolution had begun. Humans, without even realizing it, had sent the first undeniable proof that they could stand alongside advanced civilizations, that Earth was capable of something far beyond expectation. By the time the story reached the first news cycles in other systems, leaked intelligence, scattered reports, and hushed transmissions, the question everyone asked was the same. What else could humanity do? If they had created something so powerful by accident, what might they accomplish on purpose? And most importantly, what did the galaxy need to do now that they had finally noticed a planet that had always been underestimated? The ripple of energy, the so-called unbelievable, was still moving outward, and there was no turning back. Every system that detected it had to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the universe. Humanity, for all its ordinary appearances, had quietly made a mark that would change interstellar history. And for the first time, the galaxy began to pay attention to a planet that had always seemed small, unremarkable, an ordinary dot. This was just the beginning. The signal was only the first step, but it had already set into motion events that would alter alliances, ignite curiosity, and challenge long-held assumptions about intelligence, power, and what it meant to be a rising species in the galaxy. Humanity had no idea what was coming next. They only knew that their experiment had worked beyond their wildest imagination, and that the universe would never look at them the same way again. While the galaxy buzzed with confusion and curiosity over the mysterious signal, life on Earth continued mostly as usual. People went to their jobs, schools, and homes, completely unaware that their planet had just made the most powerful announcement it could ever make. Only a small circle of scientists knew what had happened, and even they were still trying to fully grasp the scale of the ripple they had accidentally unleashed. Inside one laboratory, a team of researchers huddled around their instruments. They stared at the readings in disbelief, their minds racing. The energy pulse they had created was far beyond what they had intended. Their experiment, designed simply to test a new propulsion method, had become something that had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The realization was both thrilling and frightening. They had unlocked a method of energy manipulation that no other civilization had produced, and now everyone out there was looking at Earth. The researchers argued quietly among themselves. Some felt a sense of pride, imagining the possibilities for their species. Others were more cautious, worried about what this attention might bring. Humanity had never faced this kind of scrutiny before. They were used to local challenges, like building better spacecraft, improving technology, and exploring their own solar system. Now, every alien race with even modest spacefaring capabilities was aware of them. And many of these civilizations were far older, far stronger, and far more advanced. As the team discussed the implications, their thoughts turned to the people outside the lab. The average human had no idea of the storm brewing in the galaxy. Children were playing in parks, friends were having dinners together, and workers were rushing through their daily routines. To everyone else, Earth was still the same familiar planet. No one expected that the pulse from a small experimental test had quietly announced to the universe that humanity was capable of extraordinary things. Meanwhile, in the wider galaxy, every detection station was analyzing the signal. Some civilizations were confused, some were scared, and some were fascinated. Many had assumed that any species capable of producing such energy had to have centuries, even millennia, of advanced science behind them. But now, Earth had shown that a relatively young species had done something completely unexpected. The galaxy was starting to rethink everything it thought it knew about humanity. The first official responses from distant civilizations were cautious. Envoys were sent, some in small scout vessels and others through faster communication channels. They were not coming with threats yet, but they were curious. They wanted to understand how Earth, a planet considered primitive by most interstellar standards, could produce something that caught the attention of every system. Back on Earth, the scientists worked tirelessly to replicate their experiment, this time under stricter control. They wanted to understand exactly what had happened, and they also wanted to prepare for the inevitable questions from outside. Some in the team worried about the possibility of misunderstandings. What if aliens thought the pulse was a weapon? What if they assumed humans were more aggressive than they actually were? They knew that once the galaxy knew, there would be no going back. While this was happening, everyday life on Earth carried on. People still worried about work deadlines, weather, and their personal lives. No one outside the labs and research facilities realized that humans had suddenly become the center of attention in a galaxy far bigger than their imagination could grasp. It was as if the whole universe had been quietly watching them. And now, for the first time, Earth had stepped into the spotlight. The energy pulse itself was still moving outward. It traveled faster than anyone had expected, reaching systems that had been considered far beyond Earth's influence. Every detection station that picked it up confirmed the same shocking fact. It came from a species that had only recently begun to explore space. Each new observation made aliens reassess their assumptions about human intelligence and ingenuity. Some older civilizations were cautious, sending observers to watch from a distance. Others were excited, seeing Earth as a potential partner in advancing science. And some were suspicious, unsure of whether humans had other hidden capabilities they hadn't yet revealed. The galaxy had begun to pay attention in a way that humans had never experienced. For the first time, Earth was no longer a minor planet. It had become a subject of study, debate, and cautious respect. Inside the labs, the team of researchers discussed what this meant for their planet. They understood that humanity had entered a new era. No longer could they assume that their actions only affected their own solar system. Every experiment, every advancement could now be observed, analyzed, and scrutinized by civilizations far older and more experienced than humans. They realized that Earth had the chance to make history, not just locally, but across star systems. The scientists also understood that with this attention came responsibility. They could no longer act in isolation. Every decision had consequences, and every experiment could send signals that might be misinterpreted. Some of them felt the weight of the world and the galaxy on their shoulders. They had discovered something powerful, something that could change the way humanity was seen forever. And yet, they were still ordinary humans, working in ordinary labs, trying to understand the extraordinary. At the same time, political leaders on Earth began to notice unusual activity. Unexplained signals, distant readings, and sudden interest from certain space agencies raised questions. Earth's governments did not yet know the full scale of the event, but they sensed that something important had happened. Discussions about national security, scientific breakthroughs, and space policy began in private, while the public remained largely unaware. Humanity was at a crossroads, standing on the threshold of a new chapter, with the rest of the galaxy starting to look at them in ways they had never experienced before. As days passed, more and more alien observers arrived near the edges of the solar system. Some sent automated probes to collect data. Others used advanced sensors to analyze Earth's magnetic fields, energy signatures, and patterns of activity. Each civilization wanted to learn as much as possible before making contact. They were curious about humans, their technology, and their potential. For the first time, humanity had become a subject of serious interstellar study. Meanwhile, the scientists continued their work, carefully refining the experiment to understand exactly why it had caused such a massive ripple. They discovered that humans had unknowingly combined a rare alignment of energy fields with innovative propulsion designs. The result was a pulse that was far stronger and more precise than any civilization had seen before. Humans had done this without realizing the full consequences, relying on intuition, creativity, and sheer persistence. For the aliens observing from afar, the discovery was shocking. Many had spent centuries trying to achieve what humans had done. In a single experiment, they had studied advanced energy systems, manipulated cosmic forces, and explored the edges of physics. And yet, humans, with their limited resources and short history in space exploration, had achieved a breakthrough that most had considered impossible. Inside the labs, the researchers felt both pride and fear. They knew that their accidental pulse had changed the galaxy's perception of humanity. The world outside the lab, still unaware of the unfolding events, carried on with life as usual. Children played, people worked, and families went about their routines. But behind the scenes, humans had quietly announced themselves to the universe. A species capable of extraordinary things. The first reports from alien envoys were cautious but clear. They wanted communication, explanations, and assurances. Humanity had caught the attention of civilizations that had long dominated interstellar science and technology. Every question now mattered. Every answer could shape humanity's future. The galaxy was watching, and humans had no choice but to respond with honesty, intelligence, and care. Even as this reality settled in, the energy pulse continued its journey. It was no longer just a scientific experiment. It had become a symbol of potential, curiosity, and the ingenuity of an ordinary species capable of extraordinary things. Humans, mostly unaware of the ripple they had created, were about to face a future where every action, every discovery, and every choice would be observed, analyzed, and in many cases, envied. In labs, homes, and government offices, humans were beginning to realize the scale of what had happened. They had inadvertently introduced themselves to the galaxy in a way that would change everything. The attention brought both opportunity and challenge. Humanity had stepped into the spotlight, and there was no turning back. The signal had done more than reach the stars. It had begun a quiet revolution. Humans were no longer just inhabitants of a small blue planet. They had become a species that the galaxy had to notice, a species with potential far beyond anyone's imagination. It was a moment of awakening, a beginning that would shape the way humans were seen for generations to come. And for the scientists, leaders, and everyday people of Earth, it was only the beginning. The pulse had opened a door, and beyond that door lay possibilities, dangers, and discoveries that no human had yet imagined. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, and the journey had only just begun. The galaxy was still buzzing from the unexpected announcement. Every detection system had confirmed the same unbelievable fact. The signal came from Earth. For many civilizations, it was a moment of shock, disbelief, and cautious curiosity, all at once. Even the most advanced societies had not anticipated that a young, seemingly insignificant species could produce something so extraordinary. Questions swirled in the minds of scholars, scientists, and political leaders alike. Some of the older, established civilizations saw potential in humanity. They thought of Earth not as a threat, but as an unexpected opportunity. A species capable of creating such a precise energy pulse could bring new ideas, fresh perspectives, and innovations to the galaxy. But others were more suspicious. How could a planet with minimal spacefaring experience suddenly produce something that disrupted detection arrays across multiple systems? Was it really an accident, or had humans discovered something deliberately powerful? To answer these questions, the first contact efforts began. Small scout ships quietly approached the edges of the solar system. They stayed hidden, observing the planet from a safe distance, carefully monitoring Earth's activities. No one wanted to provoke humans accidentally, but everyone wanted to understand what had just happened. Some sent subtle signals, hoping to gauge the response, while others relied on long-range sensors to study energy patterns, electromagnetic fluctuations, and unusual atmospheric phenomena. On Earth, life continued mostly as normal. Most humans had no idea that advanced alien vessels were quietly scanning their planet from millions of kilometers away. Ordinary people worried about traffic, deadlines, and daily routines, completely unaware that their planet had suddenly attracted attention from civilizations far older and far more experienced than they were. Only a small circle of scientists and government officials knew the truth, and they were carefully deciding how to respond. Inside one laboratory, researchers worked around the clock. They tried to understand why their experiment had created such a massive ripple in the galaxy. Every calculation, every theory, every simulation was scrutinized. The energy pulse had not only been powerful, it had been precise, structured, and completely unique. Humans had unintentionally demonstrated something that many advanced civilizations had been attempting for centuries. The team realized that they now carried responsibility not just for themselves, but for their entire species. Every move they made could affect how the galaxy saw humanity. If aliens interpreted the pulse as a weapon, the consequences could be disastrous. If they interpreted it as an invitation or a discovery, it could open doors humans had never imagined. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on them, but it also inspired a quiet determination. Humans had achieved something incredible, and now they had the chance to prove their worth in a universe that had long underestimated them. Meanwhile, the first alien probes began transmitting data back to their home systems. They confirmed the same astonishing findings. Humans had created a structured energy field that had traveled vast distances without losing power or precision. It was a method of energy manipulation, unlike anything previously recorded. The data sparked heated debates among alien scientists. Some argued that humans were naturally gifted with a rare intuition for physics. Others suggested that humanity's creativity and willingness to experiment in unconventional ways had allowed them to bypass limitations that had constrained other civilizations. The political implications were just as intense. Councils of older civilizations debated what approach to take. Should they reach out peacefully? Should they wait and observe? Or should they assume that humans were potentially dangerous and prepare for defensive action? The galaxy had never encountered a species that could attract such widespread attention without even intending to. Earth had suddenly become a point of focus for diplomacy, security, and science. All at once, back on Earth, the scientists faced difficult decisions. They knew that the ripple in space had been accidental, but they also knew that it could not be ignored. They began carefully crafting protocols for communication. What would they say if an alien vessel reached Earth? How could they explain what had happened without causing panic? How could they make sure humanity was seen as intelligent and capable, but not threatening? These questions became a priority because they understood that the galaxy was already watching and waiting for a response. In the wider universe, observers continued to monitor Earth's activities. They watched how humans built their spacecraft, how they conducted experiments, and how they responded to new challenges. They were fascinated by the ingenuity, persistence, and adaptability of the species. Unlike many older civilizations, humans often found solutions through creativity, intuition, and collaboration rather than rigid rules or long-standing traditions. This unpredictability made them both intriguing and unpredictable to alien analysts. The ripple of energy from Earth had also triggered a wave of speculation among civilizations that were previously unaware of the planet. They began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity's potential. If a species with limited spacefaring history could create such a pulse, what else might they achieve? Could humans one day influence trade routes, technology development, or even galactic politics? The thought made some leaders anxious. While it inspired curiosity and excitement in others. Within the laboratories on Earth, researchers felt a mix of pride and pressure. They had no intention of becoming interstellar figures, yet the universe had now placed humanity under scrutiny. Every new experiment, every technological development could attract attention. They had inadvertently opened a door to the wider galaxy, and now they had to carefully navigate the consequences. The energy pulse was no longer just an experiment. It had become a symbol of human potential. At the same time, ordinary humans went about their daily lives, oblivious to the extraordinary events unfolding around them. Children played in parks, adults commuted to work, and families shared meals at home. To them, Earth was still the same planet it had always been. The streets, the rivers, and the cities remained familiar. But in the vastness of space, alien eyes were watching, and their curiosity grew with each passing day. Communication strategies began to take shape in secret. Earth scientists and leaders realized that first contact, when it came, would be delicate. They wanted to appear friendly, intelligent, and capable, but they also needed to protect the planet from misinterpretation. If the galaxy assumed hostility or recklessness, the consequences could be catastrophic. Humanity had to present itself as a species ready to take its place among the stars, responsibly. As the days passed, more alien observers appeared near the edges of the solar system. Some were stealthy, cloaking themselves behind gravitational anomalies or asteroid fields. Others used long-range sensors to study Earth without revealing their presence. Each new observation confirmed what they already suspected. Humans had created something truly remarkable. The pulse had revealed not just technical skill, but the potential for a species that could think, innovate, and adapt in ways that many older civilizations could not predict. Inside the labs, the scientists worked tirelessly to understand exactly what had happened. They recreated simulations, tested new energy models, and refined their understanding of the experiment. They discovered that humans had unknowingly combined rare natural alignments with innovative propulsion designs, producing a pulse that traveled faster, farther, and with more precision than anyone had expected. The discovery filled them with awe and reinforced the sense that humanity had stepped into a new stage of existence. Alien analysts, observing from afar, were equally impressed. Many had spent centuries attempting to achieve what humans had done. In a single experiment, they had studied energy systems, manipulated cosmic forces, and pushed the limits of technology. And yet, humans young, relatively untested, and seemingly ordinary, had achieved a breakthrough that few could have predicted. The galaxy began to reassess its assumptions about Earth. Humans were no longer a minor species. They were a civilization with unexpected potential, a species capable of innovation that could influence the wider universe. Every detection system, every fleet, and every council began to treat Earth with caution, curiosity, and respect. Humans had changed their place in the galaxy, even without realizing it. For the scientists, leaders, and researchers on Earth, the challenge was clear. They had to navigate a world suddenly full of questions, expectations, and scrutiny. They had to prepare for potential contact, consider diplomatic approaches, and protect humanity's reputation. At the same time, they were excited by the possibilities. The accidental pulse had opened doors to exploration, collaboration, and discovery that no human had ever imagined. Meanwhile, the energy pulse continued to move outward. It traveled faster than anyone had predicted, crossing star systems and leaving a trail of analysis and speculation in its wake. Every civilization that detected it was forced to consider the implications. Humans were not only capable of extraordinary science, but they had done it without guidance from others. They had achieved something independently that many civilizations had spent centuries trying to master. Life on Earth went on. People remained unaware of the significance of what had occurred. They were still. By the time the first alien envoys reached the outskirts of the solar system, humanity was still largely unaware of the full scope of what had happened. Ordinary life continued as it always had, with people going to work, children playing in parks, and families sharing meals at home. Earth seemed calm, almost unchanged, while unseen eyes from far across the galaxy carefully observed every movement. The first contact was about to happen, but no one knew exactly how it would unfold. The envoys arrived quietly, using advanced cloaking and stealth technology to remain undetected. They wanted to understand humanity before revealing themselves. Their sensors monitored energy emissions, transportation patterns, and communication networks. They studied the planet's scientific output and technological progress. Every detail was analyzed because the signal from Earth had proven that this species was capable of things far beyond its perceived level of advancement. Inside the laboratories where the energy pulse had been created, the scientists had begun preparing for the possibility of visitors. They had simulations and protocols ready, but nothing could fully capture the reality of meeting another civilization. They knew that first contact could be peaceful or confrontational, and they debated carefully how to present humanity. Should they appear confident, cautious, transparent? Every choice mattered because the galaxy had already started forming its opinion of humans. Outside, life continued its ordinary rhythm. People had no idea that the future of humanity was about to shift in a way no one could have predicted. They went about their daily routines, unaware that invisible ships and sensors watched every corner of the planet, gathering data on how humans lived, worked, and solved problems. A contrast between the everyday life on Earth and the extraordinary. Attention from the galaxy was staggering. Humans, for the first time, were being judged on a cosmic scale. The alien observers were fascinated by what they saw. They noted the adaptability of humans, the way people solved problems creatively, and the determination to keep moving forward despite challenges. They saw that while humans were young as a spacefaring species, they had a level of ingenuity and resourcefulness that few civilizations could match. Every routine task on Earth, from building infrastructure to scientific research, revealed subtle clues about humanity's potential. Inside the laboratories, the team of scientists felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. They knew that contact with aliens was inevitable, and that how humanity presented itself could shape its future. They worked tirelessly to understand the ripple they had created, running simulations and refining their explanations. They also considered the social implications. How would governments respond? How would the public react if they knew that aliens were already observing them? They realized that transparency, careful communication, and measured actions would be essential. For the alien envoys, observing humanity was both a study and a challenge. They had expected to find a species that was predictable, limited, and constrained by its technological stage. Instead, they discovered a species capable of unexpected innovation, a species that could create something powerful and precise without fully understanding its own potential. The pulse from Earth had been accidental, but it revealed a species with instincts, creativity, and intelligence that could not be ignored. Political councils in the galaxy were now paying close attention. Leaders debated how to approach humanity. Should they offer guidance and mentorship? Should they wait and see what humans would do next? Or should they approach cautiously, fearing that humans might be more dangerous than anyone had expected? The consensus was that direct observation was necessary, and contact would have to be carefully managed to prevent misunderstanding. Meanwhile, on Earth, scientists prepared to respond if contact became unavoidable. They drafted protocols for communication, messages, and demonstrations of technology. They also considered the ethics of interacting with a civilization far older and more advanced than their own. The goal was to show that humanity was intelligent, capable, and peaceful. The team understood that missteps could have serious consequences, but they also saw the opportunity to shape humanity's place in the galaxy. The first indirect communication attempts began subtly. Alien probes transmitted signals that were almost imperceptible, encoded in ways that required careful attention to notice. These signals were not aggressive, but they were deliberate. They sought information, trying to understand the culture, science, and capabilities of humanity before revealing the envoys. It was a cautious approach, one that mirrored the caution humans themselves might have used if they were in the same position. Inside the labs, scientists detected the unusual transmissions and quickly realized their significance. This was humanity's first contact, albeit indirect. The team studied the signals, trying to understand their origin, structure, and intent. They debated whether to respond immediately or wait for clearer communication. Each decision carried weight because any response would set the tone for humanity's initial impression. As days passed, the alien presence became more noticeable. though still invisible to the general population. Sensors detected unusual patterns in the outer solar system, movements that did not match natural celestial behavior. Satellites recorded anomalies that were later dismissed as technical errors, but in reality, they were the first signs of interstellar visitors observing humanity. For the scientists, these anomalies confirmed what they already suspected. The galaxy was paying attention, and humanity's actions would now have consequences far beyond Earth. The envoys studied human interaction, behavior, and problem-solving. They were particularly interested in the scientists who had created the energy pulse. Unlike other species, humans approached challenges with creativity and intuition. They adapted quickly, learned from mistakes, and often found solutions that others could not anticipate. This behavior fascinated the envoys and made them more cautious in their approach. Humans were unpredictable, intelligent, and capable of growth. They could be allies, competitors, or something entirely different, depending on how first contact unfolded. Inside Earth laboratories, the scientists worked on a careful strategy. They planned to demonstrate humanity's intentions through controlled experiments, scientific transparency, and clear communication. The goal was to prove that humans were capable of great innovation, but not reckless aggression. They understood that their accidental pulse had set expectations, and now they had to show that humanity could meet them responsibly. Meanwhile, governments on Earth began to notice subtle anomalies in satellite readings and energy patterns. Military and space agencies quietly investigated, suspecting natural phenomena at first, but slowly realizing that something unusual was occurring. They began coordinating with scientific institutions to analyze the data, preparing for the possibility of encountering an advanced presence in space. Although the general population remained unaware, officials understood that humanity was on the brink of a historic moment. Alien analysts continued to study Earth. They observed patterns of collaboration, problem-solving, and innovation that were rare among younger civilizations. Humans were not the most advanced species in terms of technology, but their creativity, resilience, and adaptability made them unique. The pulse had been accidental, but it revealed a species with potential far beyond what others had anticipated. Scientists understood that the coming interactions would be delicate. First impressions would matter. Messages sent, experiments conducted, and explanations given to determine how humanity was perceived for generations. They worked tirelessly, rehearsing communication strategies and analyzing potential risks. Every detail mattered, because humanity's place in the galaxy could be shaped by the next few decisions. Meanwhile, ordinary humans remained unaware of the extraordinary events unfolding around them. They continued their daily routines, unaware that the galaxy had started watching and analyzing their every move. Their planet had become a point of focus, and humans had unknowingly stepped onto a stage far larger than any they had imagined. The alien envoys, having gathered enough data, began planning their first cautious approach. They wanted to make contact in a way that was respectful and non-threatening, while still gaining a clear understanding of humanity's capabilities and intentions. They observed how humans responded to challenges, how they communicated internally, and how they adapted to unexpected situations. Every observation reinforced the idea that humans were intelligent, resourceful, and capable of handling contact with a more advanced civilization. Inside the laboratories, the team of scientists realized that their accidental energy pulse had set in motion a chain of events that could define humanity's future. They understood the responsibility they now carried and the opportunity that lay before them. The galaxy was watching, and humans had a chance to show that they were capable, intelligent, and worthy of recognition on an interstellar scale. The pulse that had begun as a small experiment was no longer just an experiment. It had become the first bridge between humanity and the wider universe. The envoys, the sensors, and the observations were all part of a larger story the humans were only beginning to understand. The coming days would determine how humanity was seen, how the galaxy would interact with ear. The ripple from Earth's energy pulse continued to spread, reaching systems that had never before noticed the small blue planet. Every new detection reinforced the same incredible truth. Humans had done something extraordinary, entirely by accident, yet with precision and intelligence that far surpassed expectations. Alien civilizations, which had long assumed that Earth was insignificant, now viewed it with curiosity, caution, and even respect. Humanity had become a species to watch, inside. The laboratories, the scientists who had created the pulse, were feeling the weight of their discovery more than ever. Their experiment had been meant to test propulsion, to explore the boundaries of energy on a local scale. They had never imagined it would draw attention across the galaxy. Now they understood that every decision they made, every experiment they conducted, could influence how humanity was perceived. It was both exhilarating and frightening. As the pulse traveled further, more alien civilizations began to take action. Some sent scouts to observe Earth directly, while others analyzed the energy signature remotely. They compared it with all known technologies and concluded that humans had achieved something entirely new. Unlike other species, humans had managed to combine creativity, intuition, and technical skill to produce results that were previously considered impossible. This alone made humanity remarkable. The councils of older civilizations debated how to respond. Some suggested sending gifts, resources, or guidance to Earth as a gesture of cooperation. Others recommended caution, fearing that humans might misuse the newfound attention or develop capabilities too quickly for the galaxy to handle. Every discussion circled back to the same point. Humans were unpredictable. Their creativity, resourcefulness, and willingness to experiment made them a species that could not be ignored, but also one that could not be easily categorized. Back on Earth, most people were unaware of the changes taking place. Daily life continued as usual. People went to work, ran errands, and spent time with friends and family. To them, Earth was still the same planet it had always been. Yet behind the scenes, scientists and government officials were preparing for the inevitable: direct contact with an alien civilization. They were designing protocols, drafting messages, and simulating possible encounters. Every detail mattered. Every action could influence humanity's reputation in the galaxy. The first alien probes that arrived in the solar system were unlike anything humans had seen. They were sleek, advanced, and operated with an intelligence that suggested a deep understanding of physics, biology, and communication. They did not attempt to intimidate or interfere. Instead, they observed. They collected data, monitored energy output, and analyzed human technology from a distance. Their goal was to understand humanity before revealing themselves openly. Inside the laboratories, scientists studied the probe's movements and transmissions. They quickly realized that the aliens were intelligent, curious, and cautious. They were not hostile, at least not yet. This realization brought both relief and urgency. Humanity had a chance to make a strong first impression, but they also had to be careful. Misunderstanding could easily lead to conflict. The team focused on preparing a response that would be clear, intelligent, and respectful. Political leaders on Earth also began to notice unusual activity. Satellites and energy monitoring systems detected anomalies in the outer solar system. Some initially dismissed the anomalies as natural phenomena, but repeated observations confirmed that something intelligent and advanced was present. Governments quietly coordinated with scientists to assess the situation and plan appropriate responses. They knew that public knowledge of extraterrestrial observation could cause panic, so they kept the information classified while preparing carefully. Alien Observers continued to study humans, fascinated by their behavior, problem-solving, and creativity. Unlike older civilizations, which often relied on tradition and established rules, humans approached challenges with innovation, adaptability, and intuition. They learned quickly, improvised solutions, and sometimes discovered methods that were entirely unconventional. For the alien analysts, this unpredictability was both intriguing and valuable. Humans were capable of extraordinary thinking, and the galaxy had not yet fully grasped their potential. Meanwhile, the scientists on Earth began refining their energy experiments. They sought to understand exactly what had caused the pulse to spread so far and with such precision. Through countless simulations, calculations, and discussions, they discovered that they had unintentionally aligned natural energy fields with advanced propulsion methods. This combination, entirely accidental, had created a structured energy pulse unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. It was proof that humans could achieve the extraordinary without even realizing it. As the pulse traveled outward, more alien civilizations adjusted their perceptions of Earth. Humans were no longer just a minor species. They were a civilization with creativity, intelligence, and potential that demanded attention. Some envoys began to consider Earth as a possible partner in scientific development, trade, and exploration. Others remained cautious, preferring to observe longer before making direct contact. Every decision by these civilizations was influenced by one undeniable fact: humans had already demonstrated that they could surprise the galaxy. In the laboratories, the scientists realized that humanity was now part of a much larger story. The accidental pulse had opened a door to the wider universe. Every experiment, every technological breakthrough, and every communication attempt could now be observed, analyzed, and interpreted by alien civilizations. They understood that first impressions would matter enormously. Humanity had the opportunity to show intelligence, creativity, and peaceful intentions, or risk being misunderstood. As the days passed, alien presence in the solar system became more evident, though still subtle. Observers tracked human activity, noting energy consumption, transportation methods, and scientific experiments. They were particularly interested in the researchers responsible for the pulse, analyzing their methods, decisions, and problem-solving techniques. Humans were resourceful, adaptable, and intelligent, and the aliens recognized that these qualities could make humanity a valuable partner or a formidable competitor in the galaxy. The scientists also began to prepare messages and demonstrations that would communicate humanity's intentions clearly. They wanted to show that humans were curious, capable, and peaceful. At the same time, they considered the ethical implications of these interactions. How could a species with limited experience navigate contact with civilizations far older and more advanced? How could they maintain honesty, respect, and safety while presenting themselves effectively? These questions became central to their preparations. Government agencies collaborated closely with scientists, sharing data and coordinating strategies. They simulated potential encounters, debated responses, and considered contingencies. They understood that the ripple from the pulse had changed the galaxy's perception of Earth and that humanity's next moves would influence how they were treated for generations. Every calculation, every protocol, and every test was designed to maximize safety while showcasing human capability. Alien observers, meanwhile, continued their careful study. They noted how humans worked together, solved problems, and adapted to new challenges. They observed collaboration in scientific research, decision-making processes, and even social interactions. Humans were not the most technologically advanced species, but their ingenuity, creativity, and resourcefulness were exceptional. The pulse had revealed not just energy manipulation, but a species capable of rapid growth and unpredictable innovation. The implications were profound. Alien councils discussed how humans might influence trade networks, technology sharing, and interstellar diplomacy. Some leaders were impressed by humanity's potential, while others remained cautious, concerned that humans could advance too quickly or develop capabilities that might disrupt established balances. Regardless of perspective, one point was clear. Earth could no longer be ignored. On Earth, ordinary life continued, largely unaware of the cosmic attention it had attracted. People worried about daily routines, family matters, and work, oblivious to the fact that unseen eyes were watching, analyzing, and learning from their every move. The contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary highlighted the uniqueness of humans, a species capable of shaping the galaxy without even realizing it. The scientists recognized that humanity's future now depended on careful navigation. First contact, when it came, would be delicate. The pulse had already set expectations, and the galaxy was waiting to see how humans would respond. Every experiment, every communication, and every demonstration would matter. The opportunity was enormous, but so were the risks. Meanwhile, the ripple of the pulse continued to spread, reaching new systems, sparking curiosity, and redefining assumptions about Earth. Each observation reinforced the idea that humans were not only capable of remarkable achievements, but also able to surprise civilizations far older and more advanced. Humanity had created something unique, and now the galaxy was adjusting its perspective accordingly. Inside the laboratories, the scientists understood that their work had changed everything. The accidental pulse had revealed human P. The day humanity would officially step into the galaxy was finally approaching. The pulse that had begun as a small experiment had spread farther than anyone could imagine, and alien observers had gathered enough information to make their first move. Though the general population remained unaware of the full scale of events, governments, scientists, and select space agencies were preparing for encounter that would change the course of human history. Inside the laboratories, the scientists who had created the pulse worked tirelessly to craft a clear and careful message. They wanted to show the galaxy that humanity was intelligent, peaceful, and capable. Every word mattered, every gesture would be analyzed, and every decision could shape humanity's reputation for generations. They rehearsed simulations, ran countless tests, and debated the ethics of communication. They understood that the universe was watching, and that this moment could not be rushed or taken lightly. Outside, ordinary humans continued with their daily lives, unaware of the extraordinary events unfolding beyond the atmosphere. Children played in parks, commuters hurried through crowded streets, and families shared quiet meals. To them, Earth felt the same as it always had, but invisible eyes from far-off systems were observing every detail. The planet's first impression on the galaxy was quietly taking shape, and humanity's future depended on how it unfolded. Alien observers had reached the edge of the solar system and were now sending signals designed to test human understanding. The messages were complex, but not threatening. They sought to gauge intelligence, curiosity, and intent. For the first time, humanity had a chance to communicate with a civilization far older and more advanced than itself. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity. The scientists studied the incoming signals carefully. They deciphered patterns, tested responses, and debated the best way to convey humanity's intentions. Their goal was simple yet profound: to show that humans were capable of understanding, collaboration, and intelligence. The pulse had already revealed human potential, but now it was time to prove that humanity could act responsibly and wisely. As communication efforts progressed, governments coordinated in secret. They established secure channels, prepared for emergencies, and discussed strategies for public disclosure. They knew that the moment of first contact would be historic. It would not only define humanity's place in the galaxy, but also set the tone for future interactions. Every decision mattered. Every step could shape how humans were perceived for centuries to come. The alien envoys, observing humanity's preparations, were impressed. They noted the organization, thoughtfulness, and intelligence evident in human actions. They observed not only scientific expertise, but also ethical consideration and strategic planning. Humans were capable of more than just innovation. They could think critically, plan carefully, and navigate complex scenarios. This combination made them unique and valuable in the eyes of the galaxy. Inside the labs, scientists debated the best way to introduce humanity to the galaxy. Should they focus on science, culture, or collaboration? How could they ensure that humans were seen as peaceful yet capable? They decided to combine all three elements, presenting Earth as a planet full of innovation, curiosity, and intelligence, while emphasizing the desire for understanding and cooperation. This approach balanced ambition with caution and creativity with diplomacy. The first exchange of messages marked humanity's official step into interstellar diplomacy. Alien observers communicated their intentions clearly and respectfully. They were not here to conquer or dominate. They were seeking understanding, collaboration, and knowledge. Humanity responded in kind, carefully constructing messages that conveyed intelligence, curiosity, and goodwill. The conversation began slowly, methodically, but it was historic in its significance. As dialogue continued, humans began to realize the enormity of the moment. The galaxy had been watching, and now humanity was participating actively in a conversation that spanned star systems. Every message, every calculation, every insight mattered. It was a test not only of intelligence, but also of creativity, ethics, and patience. Humanity was no longer an isolated species. It had become a participant in a wider, more complex universe. The alien envoys began to reveal more about themselves, their technology, and their civilizations. Humans learned about advanced energy systems, interstellar travel, and methods of communication that had taken millennia to develop. For the first time, Earth scientists had access to knowledge far beyond what humanity had previously imagined. Yet the exchanges were cautious. Both sides were aware that trust had to be earned and that misunderstandings could be dangerous. Humanity responded with transparency, creativity, and humility. The message was clear. Humans were capable, curious, and willing to learn, but they were also careful and respectful. The galaxy had expected surprises from Earth, and humans delivered, showing intelligence not only in technology, but in thoughtfulness, planning, and ethics. The first contact became more than a conversation. It became the foundation of a lasting reputation. Meanwhile, the ripple of the energy pulse continued to spread across the galaxy. Every new system that detected it served as another reminder of humanity's unexpected capabilities. Alien civilizations that had not yet made contact began to pay attention. They studied human behavior, problem-solving, and communication. Slowly, the perception of Earth began to shift universally. Humans were no longer seen as a minor species. They were seen as a civilization with potential, creativity, and intelligence. In laboratories on Earth, scientists reflected on the journey. What had started as a simple experiment had led to humanity's first meaningful interaction with the galaxy. They had inadvertently made a statement to the universe. Humans were capable of extraordinary achievement, innovation, and thought. The responsibility that came with this recognition was enormous, but it also inspired hope and pride. Humanity had entered a new chapter, one full of possibility and challenge. The political implications were just as profound. Earth's leaders realized that humanity's actions would influence interstellar diplomacy, trade, and exploration. The decisions made during these early encounters could set patterns for decades, even centuries. There was no room for recklessness. Every response had to be measured, thoughtful, and informed by both ethics and intelligence. Humanity was stepping onto a stage far larger than any government or individual had ever faced before. Alien observers noted humanity's rapid adaptability. Unlike older civilizations, which often relied on centuries of tradition, humans approached problems with flexibility, creativity, and collaboration. They improvised solutions, learned from mistakes, and found paths that others might have overlooked. The galaxy began to see humans as a species that could change, adapt, and grow faster than expected. The accidental pulse had been a preview, a demonstration of potential, and now humans were proving it through deliberate action. As communications continued, the foundations of trust began to form. The aliens recognized that humans were intelligent, ethical, and capable of understanding complex concepts. Humanity recognized that advanced civilizations could be partners, not threats, and that knowledge shared responsibly could benefit all. The first contact evolved into collaboration, discussion, and the sharing of ideas. Humanity was no longer isolated. It had become part of a larger, interconnected network of intelligent civilizations. The ripple of the energy pulse, though initially unintended, had become symbolic. It was a reminder that humans could achieve the extraordinary, even without fully understanding the consequences. It was proof that creativity, persistence, and intelligence could create ripples across the galaxy. And it was the first step in a journey that would take humanity far beyond its home planet, beyond its solar system, and into the hearts and minds of civilizations across the stars. As the first exchanges continued, humans and alien civilizations began exploring the possibilities of cooperation. Scientific research, energy technology, and space exploration became topics of discussion. Humans shared what they knew, and they learned from civilizations that had developed knowledge over millennia. The galaxy had opened its doors, and humanity had entered not as a visitor, but as a participant capable of contributing ideas, innovations, and solutions. Inside the laboratories, the team that had created the pulse reflected on the journey from their first experiment to this historic moment. What had seemed small and insignificant had become a turning point for an entire species. Humans had demonstrated intelligence, adaptability, and creativity to the galaxy. They had taken a step that no one on Earth could have imagined when the experiment first began. The accidental pulse had become the bridge to the wider universe, and humanity had crossed it. Even as humans engaged with alien civilizations, ordinary life continued on Earth. People went about their routines, still largely unaware that their planet had achieved something historic. To the rest of the galaxy, however, Earth had changed forever. Humans were no longer just inhabitants of a small blue planet. They were recognized as intelligent, capable, and creative beings. The universe had taken notice, and humanity's place among the stars was now secure. The first contact marked the beginning of a new era. Humans had proven that they were capable of intelligence,